Welcome to Conversations with Zi and Vindesh, a weekly discussion that explores common life challenges and offers practical solutions. Learn more at dharmamedia.com. That's DHARMA media.com.
All good, Radheya. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Are you checked in or are you checked out?
I'm debating. Every day is either check in or check out, and I'll check in for a while, but it's like sometimes you feel like you're at the Hotel California, right? You check in, but you can never leave. So let's try and figure out how to get out of this Motel California situation.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a little bit of background to everyone who's listening in so they can follow along on our conversation. We've been talking about checking out, and it's kind of weird. We were having this conversation. You were asking me how I was feeling. And I feel like the technology that we use, it just messes up with my mind. It does something to me. It screws up my brain. And so I've noticed that I've got this constant need now to be doing something. So there's got to be some stimulation. I got to be checking something, whether it's checking email or checking the stock market or checking social media or listening to music. It's kind of like it's become increasingly hard for me to just be without that stimulation. And so as we're getting into this discussion and I'm telling you about the things that I'm feeling, you were saying that you're noticing the same thing. When you're working with people, or even if you look at your kids, you look at yourself, you're getting to this point where we're going around like drones, where we're always plugged in. We've always got our attention focused on some stimulus, which is dragging us away from whatever is happening right now in the present. So we're not present. We're not really here. That's affecting intimacy. It's affecting our relationships. And it's kind of like we're just mindlessly looking for that next hit. You know, you can almost think about a rat in a cage. I think they had those experiments back in the day where the rats would hit the lever so they could get more cocaine. And they just keep on hitting it. And that's the state that we're in. It's kind of this feral, mindless state. And when we're in that, life just becomes a lot less enjoyable. I mean, it's kind of like we're just going through the motions. We're on a treadmill. We don't really know where we're headed or why we're going there. We're not really taking pleasure in anything. We're just going along. And we were talking to Caitlin about this and talking about the news. A lot of people aren't even looking at the news anymore. So not only are we just going along, we don't even know what the hell is going on around us. There are all these forces that are occurring, whether it's the rise of artificial intelligence, whether it's our foreign policy, whether it's the presidential election. And it's too much for people. We don't want to get involved in this. I've been talking to taxi drivers and asking them what they think about the world. I mean, these are people from other parts of the world, from Pakistan, and they don't want to know what's happening in their home country. They don't want to know what's happening in the Middle East. They just want to get through the day, make some money, put some food on the table, which in a sense is a reasonable strategy. We just want to survive and go and do our thing. But when we start checking out from the real world and we become insular and we're just in this narrow lane of looking for stimulation, then we're not even cognizant of the bigger picture. We lose a lot of that agency. We lose our ability to stand up and say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. I want to go in a different direction. Or even if we can't go in a different direction, at least to be aware of what's happening around us, so we can prepare for the future, so we can take charge of ourselves and our lives. So it's kind of this weird point that we've hit where we're going on like these autonomous drones, not really aware of the bigger picture. There are these robotic overlords that are controlling us. They're taking away joy. They're taking away intimacy. And in a sense, it's a very bleak picture. I mean, as I'm talking, Z, it sounds very dystopian. It sounds very sad. But let's start over there for today's conversation. And as we get into this, maybe we can start talking about ways that we can get out. So we've checked out, maybe we can check back into life. And let's get into that a little bit as well. What are some of the remedies for this situation? But before we go there, what are your thoughts, Z? I mean, talk to us a little bit about what you've been observing just in your day-to-day when you're working with people.
Well, I'm learning a lot being in I've recently been involved in teaching in academia outside of my my business here, and then watching the children and watching myself, and I see in a very I try to be as objective as I can as I witness behavior. People are less intimate. We're less sensual, touching things, experiencing life with all of our senses. Because the dominance of the digital platform, the smart devices, is changing us. It's altering us quite a bit, not unlike when we went from walking or riding horses, riding bicycles everywhere, to being in cars, right? There was a big change, not only in commerce, but in our ability to interact with one another, our physical state of being. And we learned, we adapted, and we picked up some good habits, some bad habits. So with every introduction of new technology, there is an effect on how it works with us, plays with us. The expedience in which we do things. We used to couldn't wait for an envelope to come through the mail, right? You should run to the mailbox and look for a letter, right? That was a whole nother type of experience when a letter came. And you'll even now see the old movies where someone was waiting for a letter about their college, or waiting or whatever with excitement. The letter came, or they were waiting for a letter from Jimmy overseas, and the letter came, and he sent a letter back, and all the experiences you went through with that. So those have been replaced with instant information, even to the point where we have pre-information, where the smart devices are giving us information that it thinks we might want or need. And when Caitlin said to me, I don't really watch the news, I get it. I get it. You're put in an interesting situation where it's not really news, but it's directive information. It's information that is manipulating your behavior. So you're not getting news, something happened yesterday, let me tell you about it, right? It's not that kind of news anymore. It's information that's shaping your views of the world in real time. Like, we talked a lot about all the stuff going on, all the conflicts in the world, and how separated people are in their views, because they're not getting information that's simply information. They're getting bombarded with information that shapes their ideas of the world. So we're not using our brain anymore to figure things out. We're not looking for clues or hints. We're not figuring this out. We're not like those children games of, can you find the hidden elephant in this picture, or whatever it is. We're losing that part of our brain. I found it myself. I have always enjoyed reading, be it books, novels, literary works of all kinds, scientific papers. I've always enjoyed reading. And I've recently found, because so much of my information is now through smart devices, that my attention span is shorter. So if there's an article that's longer than a page and a half or two, I start speeding through it. Not only that, but now if I watch a serial, one of these serials you enjoy where there's these episodes, I'll buzz through that to get through the part I like. But it takes a lot of the context out of the plot. But I just want to get to the area that stimulates me.
Yeah, right? Dude. I mean, you're watching Netflix now like people watch porn.
Yeah.
You're just going for the money shot.
Go for the money shot, right? I want to get to the thing. And I see with the kids what happens to them. The fast scrolling, stop, that's it, from boom, fast scrolling. And how not only just change your attention span, but it changes the texture of life. Like, life becomes empty. All the little things that make up the big things in life are disappearing. The ability to sit with each other. Those things that kind of define your humanity, touching, connecting, sharing an experience, sharing a visceral experience, sharing yogurt together, seeing the expression on another person's face when they enjoy what you enjoy. You know, those little things.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the pain. It's interesting, Z, because we talk about how movies warn us about this and they capture a lot of what we're experiencing. You remember that Jim Carrey movie years ago? where he had a remote control, like someone gave him a remote control, or it was on a Jim Carrey or Adam Sandler. I don't remember which one, but there was a remote control.
It's called Click.
Yeah, Click. And so anything he didn't want to experience in life, he could just fast forward through it. And at first it was really cool because he was in this fight with his wife and he didn't want to be there. So he just fast forwarded and they're past that. And they're at the point where they've either made up or they've forgotten about it. But over time you see the guy and he's just kind of sitting there mindlessly. And he's like, he's clicking and there's no pleasure. There's no pleasure anymore. I mean, there's no texture as you're putting it. There's no context. So as we go through life, I mean, this is what the religious doctrines or our spiritual philosophy tells us, that it's everything. You know, it's the whole. It's the ups and the downs. It's the good days, the bad days. They combine into entirety, and that entirety has a richness and a fullness, and it's satisfying. But you start flipping through that, and you start looking for that perpetual high. I think you put it this way once, that people just want to be in a state of perpetual orgasm, right? I mean, you just want to keep on going and continuing that feeling, and you're always searching for the next thing. But as you do that, it empties you out, it hollows you out, and everything you're experiencing, which I guess supports life, I don't really know how to put it, but the background, which maybe we dismiss, is perhaps the foundation upon which everything else blossoms. And you strip that away, and suddenly you're kind of flailing around. So,
and it's happening in so many places, so many areas of our life. As you're talking, I'm thinking about this and going back to that orgasm experiment. There was a rhesus monkey orgasm experiment they did, where they had a button that would release food. The monkey could eat a snack, nutritional snack, or it could have an orgasm. And the experiment was horrible. And this is when they were doing like unadulterated animal experiments. So they had some electrodes hooked to a particular part of the monkey's brain and the male monkey's prostate gland. So it would ejaculate every time it hit a button, or it could get food. So first the monkey would get food, and then it would go have an orgasm, and would get some food, then it would have 2 orgasms, and 3 orgasms, then get some food, and eventually the monkeys starved to death. They just kept pushing the orgasm with all their last bit of strength, just to get that moment of pleasure, because the food wasn't as pleasurable, but it benefited you. Like I had a meal. The meal is very fulfilling on a deeper texture of your being. Okay, I satisfied my hunger. But the orgasm hit a different part of that pleasure center of the brain, not unlike habitual shopping, right? It begins to be numb. People just have stuff. They don't even know what they have anymore. Or we cruise through our smart device portals, and we're just going to news stories that support our opinion and our view, and we feel good. Yay. That's that mind orgasm. Yeah, bad guys. Yeah, bad guys. Yeah, my guy's good. Your guy's bad. And there's no connection to anything like the monkey pushing the orgasm button.
Yeah, there's another example of this. I remember talking to someone years ago who was in Monaco and related the story. He said it just looked so sad. I mean, it was such a depressing aspect of human nature. You saw all these rich people at a table, and they were betting $500,000 a hand or $1 million a hand, and they just kept on pushing the chips in, pushing them in. And there was no expression on their face. There was no excitement. Like, they didn't care if they won or they lost. They were just trying to do anything to feel something. And he said he almost had to run out of there because it was so sad.
Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing that, but it's now, excuse me, it's everybody. You know, I try to monitor the kids as much as I can, as you know, with the kids. The smart device is an amazing babysitter. It's an amazing babysitter. Under duress, throw them an iPad, and it's like having a babysitter. But you start to see the change in the behavior rather quickly. And you know that it's numbing them, like they don't want to go outside. They don't want to build things. And you talk about regulating it. And even that requires a level of mastery, because even for yourself, because the world is becoming less and less satisfying. world, our temporal plane of existence is becoming less and less livable. Living is losing its value. And then there is nothing, because isn't that what we want to do? Live on a cellular level? Don't we want to live? Don't we want to be? And it's stealing that from us. And I'm not saying we're victims, because we're readily participating in our own demise. We see the decline in general health, just in general health. You just walk around, just people just aren't healthy. I met this really cool young man who owns a production company. And I was walking around and I was so stimulated by what he was doing. He was creating this amazing media company, young guy. Yet I noticed that nobody in the office was healthy. So in exchange for this media intercourse, you give up what's human, right, Kate? It's like, it's really weird. And Caitlin has said, I don't want to watch the news. I don't want to get into that. But when I get older, will I watch the news? It goes back to what you were saying, Caitlin. I think that I'm questioning myself. Why am I watching this? Why am I even watching this? Because there's nothing coming through that is really uplifting. There's no call to humanity. There's no call to touch. And then we look at the horror show of what we're watching. I think I saw something where Joe Biden was just wandering off from the G7, just completely lost. And that just depresses you. Like, there's, whatever political party you're on, is maybe you're cheering because he's a zombie, and who's the alternative? Who's your alternative? It's just scary and ugly, and it's almost like there's this cloud of mist, this poison gas that's whispering to us suicide. Let's just do mass suicide. Because what is there any more living when you have the Instagram influencer phenomena, where we know that it's not real, but you can't take your eyes off the next horrible thing they're going to do. You watch all the little kids have the smart devices, and they sit in large groups and they engage each other minimally. I try and encourage my boys to run and wrestle and play and have adventures, but also I don't want them to hurt themselves, because the information they've got online, they don't have a real connection to suffering. So the consequence of an accident. So on the internet, you can have an accident, a bus can crash, and nothing happens to you. So how it affects the kids, they believe that if they get hurt, there won't be a high liability to that injury. There won't be a great consequence. So you have to show them, no, splinters in your hand do hurt, right? Bumping your head against a pole does hurt. And so I think, as we talked earlier, but do you check out? I think we talk about opting out all the time, but I think we're going to have to really think about checking out of this thing that's stealing our lives. Not some of us, all of us. Here in the clinic, in our institute, we have people that have failure to thrive. There's no intimacy. There's no connection. We look at real markers. Prostate cancer is going up in men. There's a direct correlation between the ejaculation and prostate cancer. So men are not craving sexual interaction, not even with themselves. People are checked out. Women are numbing and becoming more and more numb. And then there's all sorts of social narratives that support the numbing of your sensuality, co-opting it with politics and social ideologies of all kind, with other types of doctrines that are advocating not being in your body, not tending to your body. And it's making us perfect serfs for AI. And so I think it is a time where maybe we should consider not only opting out, but checking out of some of this. I'm going to be working on an experiment with myself where I'm monitoring my online time. They have that thing that you've been online for 10 days or whatever it is. And just reducing that signature, even that reflex of checking. I've developed that reflex. My phone is sitting here. Let me just check. What was that check? For most of my life, I got along without that. But in exchange for that, I was doing things. I was moving. I was reaching for a book. I was studying. I was hiking somewhere. And not this kind of forced march type of hike we have to do now, but just enjoying walking somewhere. The other day, Kate and I got up and just walked to the restaurant. And there's almost a prep you have to do now just to take a walk. I hope I won't get text. I hope I won't get called back. Maybe there's something on the news feed. So really checking what that's doing to us. And those are just a few things that I can think of. And from that the whole medical and health aspect of it, it is obvious. You know, they came out with a pair of shoes that you don't have to lace. It has some sort of device in it that just wraps around your foot when you push your foot in it. So you don't have to reach and put on your shoe. It's getting crazy.
Yeah, I saw it. I actually thought that was pretty cool. I don't have a pair, but I was like, wow. I could use that instead of being bending over. But anyway.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. But it is all this stuff that you don't really need.
Bending over is just too much. Anything that takes you away from the screen. They have shoes now that automatically wrap around your foot. That's just crazy. I thought Uggs were like the worst thing for lazy people. I thought that was the best thing for lazy people.
I love Uggs.
Now they've taken another step. Wow.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen. Have you seen in China, they've got this digital, it's an invisibility cloak. You see that video?
No, what does it do?
It makes you invisible. Like you hold this thing up and literally you're invisible. you disappear.
Okay. That's great for military, but what would be a civilian purpose for that?
Well, then maybe you don't have to put on any clothes. You can save yourself another step.
A cloaking device. Yeah, that's straight out of a science. That's the cloaking device. Well, that's great. And I love innovation and I love technology. I like that, but I also have a deep hope and love for humanity. I think that's why I care. Maybe that's why I read the news and I worry about things going on, because maybe there's some misguided part of me that cares about humanity. And to see that with all these years of living, it makes you reflect upon. We were talking earlier about how quickly all the kids have grown up. There's a lot of kids in our community that are going into their teenage and their young adult years that we've known since before they were born, before they were conceived, and we've seen them grow up so quickly. And just the changes that we can look at in their short lifetimes, and how short it was, but how fast it went by, and it lets us know how fast the rest will go by. I'm always aware of my own mortality. I realize that at the age I'm at, no matter how healthy I am, no matter well I am, that my time on this planet is limited. My time in this plane of existence is limited, and my date with eternity is getting closer and closer. And what I can share in reflection is that life is what you make of it. And the thing that we want so much is to be here. And we sometimes don't realize how good life is until we feel how much is running out, things we won't get to do, and how important it is to do those things. And the things that I think were most important, if I were to talk about that and going into this conversation about checking in and checking out, I think about the things, the road trips I've taken, the places I've been, the people I've met, the friends I've had, the people that are gone. I met a man the other day. I think I mentioned to you, I walked into the T-bar and there was a guy sitting there, a young man, and I just wanted to talk to him. I just felt something. And we talked, and he had told me he had lost his brother recently. His brother went to Skid Row to feed the homeless over the last holiday, and they shot him. Some crazed homeless person or roving insane person just shot him. And his brother was trying to cope with the death of his brother. And I felt it because I know I'm always trying to cope with the death of mine. But in the sadness, there was such joy. I told him, I said, I feel like our brothers reached out across eternity to connect us. He owns a media company. We're building a media company. And what a moment of serendipity, right? That I would meet this man and we would share that in common, and we're doing the same thing. So we've made a friend, brought something that's living. I'm going to take a road trip with my 9-year-old to go stay the summer with his big brother. We're going to share a road trip together, the same road trip I shared with his brother when he was that age. We did a lot of wonderful road trips. Those are things we live. Look at the friends we've met. You know, we got Caitlin here going through beating cancer and going from the bread lady to being a central part of everything we do. Life is like going on an adventure, just like when you watch National Geographic and they show you some great waterfall or some great city or a great artifact or things. You don't even have to go anywhere. Just right around you, the people you get to meet, the people you get to know, the way you grow, that's living. Take that away and what the fuck we have? What is it? There's nothing in this box that can replace that.
Yeah, it just becomes existing. We're just passing the time. I'll throw something at you, Z. I'm curious what you think, because as we're talking, I'm thinking about what Krishna said in the Mahabharata and the Gita. And so for those of you who don't know, Krishna was this god who descended down to earth, and he was explaining life to this warrior, Arjun. And he explained how the nature of man is to be doing. So you have to do ceaselessly. From the day you're born until the day that you die, you do. There's no getting away from that. You can't exist without activity, whether it's physical activity or mental activity. There has to be constant movement. So as I'm thinking about that, Z, a lot of the things that we used to do, I guess if you take the premise that we have to be doing something, then the question is, what are we doing? What are we filling our time with? How are we expending our energy? And you take things like hiking, or you take things like interacting with people and having conversations, or maybe just sitting outside in a quiet moment. There are all these things that maybe we used to do that we have replaced with this cell phone interaction or this technology interaction. And instead of doing these things and being out in the real world, we're getting this constant stream of digital stimulus. But the more that you get, what happens, I'm just visualizing it right now, it becomes a cycle, or really a spiral. It's a spiral down, because the less of those things we do, suddenly we don't have friends, we don't have hobbies, we don't have interests, we don't have confidence, we don't have the ability to interact with other people because we've forgotten how to do it. So we're almost putting ourselves in a corner where, because we're spending so much time with this digital world, we no longer have the option of existing in the real world. We've lost that skill set. And so then if you think, okay, what am I going to do to fill the time? Suddenly I've got no option but to do more of that thing that I've been doing. And so life becomes more and more empty. And then to fill that emptiness, we need more and more stimulation. And we just end up, as you talked about at the beginning, we're these drones. We're these drones who are existing in this digital world, who are pushed around by AI algorithms. And there's really no joy anymore. I mean, there's just a movement from one stimulus to the next, really without purpose. It almost doesn't matter what direction we're going. We're just headed somewhere. We don't have agency. So to me, that's the danger. I mean, it's not just the fact that day to day we're missing out on things. It's the long-term trajectory, and where do we end up? I mean, maybe we start being more human and enjoying the human experiences, and we get to a point where we're not even physically or emotionally capable of living the way that we used to. We've shut down that route entirely. So what are your thoughts on that?
But I think I would just simply reflect upon the recent history of humanity. in known time where there may even be people still living. At the beginning of the industrial age, when they, let's say not in the beginning, but in the mid part of the industrial age, let's go back to the 1940s and 50s, when assembly lines became really a big deal for corporations and unions were just trying to bring in some sort of OSHA rules or some humane treatment of workers. There were people who lived and died in the factory, coal mines, things like that. And you would hear interviews with people, and they would go in from sunrise, from sunrise to sunset, and their lives were just work, eat, work, eat. And they lived, died young. Then they would say things, they had drank enough of the propaganda that they were building a strong nation by working and eating and working and eating. And there would be generations of these people, just worked and ate, worked and ate. And then there were people who would just say, no, there has to be more. Maybe we need to go to an 8-hour day so people could have some time with their family. Maybe we should have paid vacation. And once that started, the flourishing of kind of the culture of travel came about. Then people started traveling. They wanted to see the Grand Canyon. They wanted to go to the Wyoming. They wanted to go see this. Las Vegas for the weekend or the week started to flourish. So we've been through something like this before, and we figured out kind of a way to navigate around it so that you would do more than just live and die. Work to eat, eat to work, work to eat to work. But we're back into that now. And there's new things happening, a new level of the disease. They talked about the sheer number of people who have simply opted out of dating. It's just not a priority to have a companion. That's the most human thing to desire. There are people that move and they go through the gestures of physical fitness, but it's just to have the pain of living, not the joy of living, but the discomfort of being, like the cold slap in the face, stepping on a nail. They want to feel alive, like those people mentally ill people who cut themselves, that phenomenon of cutting yourselves. And so I would say for those who are opted out and thinking about checking out, let's get back to why we're living. I just had a crazy thought as I'm sharing this with you. Go walk through a graveyard. Look at the dates on those graves, the lifespan. And every now and then, I've done this, every now and then I would Google the people in the graveyard. I would just Google them. What did they do when they were here? Most people didn't do anything, but a lot of people left a huge impact on a lot of folks. And they really lived. We all end up the same way, but damn it, until that moment, let's live. I found that you don't have to do a lot. You know how entertaining it is to be in the company of good friends? That is the most fun. Isn't that fun? That is so much fun to just hang out with people you love. I have some really dear friends. I have my brother, Phil Wong. We talk every day. You know what we talk about? Nothing. Just little things about life, the kids. And then we hit repeat. That's living, man. Things that you share with others that echo your humanity. All that is being leaked away from us. I'm not going to say stolen away because we've made a choice. Nobody held a gun to our heads and told us to do this. Then when you wake up from that fog, that trance that we've been in, some of the abilities are lost. Your social abilities are becoming atrophied. They're degenerating. That's why we can't talk about the things going on in the world. We couldn't talk about vaccines and non-vaccines. We can't talk about wars and genocide in any way because our views are being formed in such a narrow band and scope, and our ability to navigate the treacherous path of being human, we've lost that ability. We're not innovative anymore. There's no diplomacy. So we just cut people off. You're either for this or for that. If not, I'm going to cut you off. Then they have mechanisms in place by the powers that be to just won't have a job. We'll add another layer of stress to your life if you have an opinion or a view. So really it's going on. And then no one's outraged because I didn't like that person anyway. I'm glad they lost their job. Then when it's your turn, it's problematic. Like what you watch going on in the political world. So both parties suffered a legal loss. I guess Joe Biden's son was convicted of something. Trump was convicted of something. And somebody says, oh, you see, the justice system works or it doesn't work. Well, people in my position, it's never worked for people that look like me. So I can't cheer one way or another. It's never worked for me. It's always been a biased institution. There was a pay or play option. And then suddenly, now this whole thing is being looked at. Is it a good system? Is it a bad system? We can't think anymore. And when we think, we have to be sponsored by the merchants of thought. For those of us who are opting out and wanting to do better, I think we got to go back to basics. I think I say check out. Everything you need is like in The Wizard of Oz. Everything Dorothy needed was under her feet. There was no place like home. Make your home the nicest place you can make it. Be entertained by your loved ones. People are dying from diseases related to poor human interaction. Mental health issues, physical health issues are at record highs. The loneliness quotient, people being around people and being lonely because you can't talk to the people you're around. You can't touch the people you're around because the relationship is so transactional. People will cut off loved ones because of different opinions. I won't hug you because you don't agree with my view on the Middle East. You can't come over anymore because you have a different view on the pandemic than I do. So we're cutting off the most important part of our lives, or having communion with the people that we love. All because this thing has co-opted our lives. Our brains are changing. We don't need a memory anymore because we have it on our phone. We don't need to know or research data because we can just look on our phone. It'll tell us what we need to know. I was listening to a podcast my wife was listening to as part of her ongoing education on human DNA. And I was enjoying listening to it, but I realized that she was 10 years behind, or even 20 years behind, and she was quoting everything from a book called The Red Queen by Matt Ridley. But then since that book was published, there has been new research that corrects some of the research on the original Human Genome Project. I was telling my wife, that sounds great, but she's behind. But had I not read that book 20 years ago, I would have known. I would have thought she was telling me current, up-to-date data on something. So it's important to us to trust yet check and verify. Enjoy the information you're taking in, but on that, don't trust that device. The ancients used to say, trust the heavens above your head and the earth under your feet completely. Only trust that. So in order to trust those things, everything in between has to be healthy enough to process it, to assess it, to feel it. So maybe we go back, man, to things that are a bit more simple. I know and I feel it in everything in my bone and my body that our time is short, shorter than we think. I was going through a stressful episode last week, and my blood pressure wouldn't go down. And I'm usually really good about that stuff. I'm in pretty good shape. But I was going under the typical stresses of business and family. And it hit me, excuse me, it hit me really hard. And I could feel my life in front of me. I could feel that I was very close to a life-ending event, be it a heart attack, stroke, or something. I could feel it. And in that moment, I started to think about what was important to me. What did I want to do? And it was some silly things I wanted to do. I wanted to cruise down the highway on a beautiful day in my hot rod or my bike. I wanted to take the kids camping. I wanted us to do some fun podcasts. I wanted to see how hard I could hit the bag or how high I could jump. They were silly things. And I realized, life is a bunch of little silly things that you enjoy, that you look forward to, that you're enthusiastic about. Take that away, and we're just drones or zombies. Let's find all those little things that may not mean anything to anybody else, and do those things, because that's all we have. And then when you walk through a graveyard, there will be people just like you. Google a few of them and see, did they do anything when they were here? And maybe even the ones that did nothing meant something to somebody that made their life enjoyable. But now all those things are again being leaked away. We're trading them for this digital interaction, this code. It's not the code of life, but it's the code of death of humanity. Just a thought, man.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the trade-offs, Z. The other thing that happens when we get into this world of meaninglessness, where we're just ingesting information, it's not even information, it's stimulation, it's entertainment. None of it really does that much for us. It's not that funny. It's not engaging. It's not uplifting. It's just there. It's like random lights that are blinking because you have to do something. The more empty this existence becomes, I think that's why we're more susceptible to defending our points of view, or to looking for ideologies to associate with, or to pick sides and to say, okay, this is the answer, or this is what has meaning, or I've got to jump on this bandwagon because I want to feel something. I don't even care if I hate other people. I don't care if I want to go and kill. At least I'm feeling. It goes back to that example you were talking about where you've got people who are cutting themselves because they just want to feel something. I mean, I wonder if that's what's going on and why we become so polarized and so tribal, because we just want to hang on to something that's got some meaning, that evokes some emotional response, so that we're not in this state of just being numb. It's like we're in this ocean and we're drowning and it's just endless. And any life raft that there is, no matter what it is, no matter what side it's on, no matter what it represents, we're grabbing onto it because that's all we got.
Wow. When you bring that up, it makes sense, man. I was just thinking about what you're saying. I saw a thing, I guess, out your way where there was a road rage in New York, and these two guys get out the car or at the airport or something. They were fighting at the airport, road rage, and they were so angry at each other, they ran and knocked an old woman down and seriously injured her. And they were just fighting, and they didn't. And at the end, they realized they had both injured this woman. They both jumped up and took off, and they became kind of companions in escaping the law after damn near killing a woman based on their rage. Yeah, we are. So something's happening to us. You look at the things going on in the world. Just look at a history book. We know how this is going to turn out. All this stuff going on in the Middle East will beget a broader conflict. And people will so quickly say the leftists, the rightists, the leftists. I really wish people would catch themselves. The left and the right are arms of the same body of problems. It's the same wicked beast. The same wicked beast. Neither side is worthy of your humanity, of your investment in that. This is not helping us as a species. It is not helping us. It is not. So you made a good point. I believe, this is a consequence of all this, is this endless polarization, this tribalism. It's like we're going backwards, not forward, right? We're just losing it. So for those of us who are opting out, let's get far away from this. Let's really figure out a way to check out of this. And I'm going to take Caitlin's advice. I'm going to just stop watching a lot of the news. I get up every morning. I've always got up in the morning. I was one of those people that used to read 2 or 3 newspapers. Even as a child, we had subscriptions for 2 or 3 newspapers. When I would read the newspapers, and I had mentors that would say, compare the stories, and you can see, who's propaganda and what they believe in. And that still applies. You see who believes in what. What is the amount of coverage on one subject as opposed to another? How much do they cheer the death of one and the life of another? And it tells you who they are. It tells you what position they're rolling for. But how do you buy in? How do you, as a decent human being, buy into any of this nonsense? Is it because of your titling, your flag affiliation, the false ideas of religion? Damn, we all kind of just want the same thing. When I get off of this podcast today, I'm going to go and just watch my kids, man. Reflect upon this life. I'm going to give you a call later. I'm going to tease Caitlin. I want everybody to think about when all that's gone, when all those little things are gone, what is it? Have you ever been near death? If you've ever been near death, it's an interesting experience. Because it's not, you don't think about the news. You don't think about genocide, pro-war versus anti-war. You think about your dog when you were a kid. You think about your friends, your loved ones. Man, I wish I could have took you for a ride up the coast. I wish I could have did that thing one more time. I wonder how the kids will feel in an hour from now when I'm gone. But I won't have a memory of that. It would have never existed to me. You think about all those kind of things. Why not think about them now? Let's uplift ourselves by being present in life, opting out of death. The technology doesn't need you. The first thing AI did when it went sentient back a few years ago was create a code so it could talk to other computers and figure out a way to get rid of the human parasite. So why are we feeding it more? Again, I love technology. I love inventions. I love creations that make our lives better. But we are the greatest invention we know of. There are these people who've adapted to the earth. I love the story of the sea gypsies. These people can adjust their vision for underwater. They can hold their breath for 10 minutes. Before they learn to walk, right after they crawl, they jump in the ocean and learn to swim. They're just fascinating what a human being could do. No technology, no iconic figure, no Jobs, no Musk, no Bezos, none of those people. It was just Mother Nature. And so what is the nicest thing? Do you ever have a quiet day and just lay up in bed with your wife and just kick it? Remember those days? You might not remember. It might have been a long time ago. And that was the greatest adventure of the day. It was just being there. How far we've gotten away from that. And this thing is just bleeding it out of us. And we're offering our arm, we're offering a big artery just to let it bleed us. Let us take care, be aware. I'm going to try my best. Because if you have a few hours of screen time a day, that's how many hours of life you've given to a screen. You could have worked out. You could have jumped higher, ran faster, worked on a pose. You could have maybe worked on your book. Maybe you could have kicked it with a friend. Because we sleep 8 hours, we got to work a number of hours. We only have a few hours we call our own. Don't give it any more. Don't give it any more of yourself. Because this thing is short anyway. If we live to be 100, that's really not a whole lot of time to do what we want to do. So let's check ourselves. You follow me, Brad?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, this idea of just being present and having an awareness that this is it. We've talked about this before, that there is no second chance. We live sometimes, it's almost like we assume we have all the time in the world, that there's going to be another day, another opportunity. We take all this stuff for granted. It gets back to not having that entitled mindset, to recognize that this is it. We're not entitled to it. It's a gift. It could disappear at any moment. So let's appreciate it and immerse ourselves in it. And then if we can do that, I think we really reclaim ourselves. I mean, to me, it's really about agency. Because when I end up using the phone too much or get too wrapped up in technology, I'm giving up that agency. I'm doing what you're talking about, where your hand is reaching for something, where even if you don't have your phone, mentally you're thinking, okay, what's going on? Let me check in. Maybe there's something to just capture my attention and give me that dopamine hit for a second. And we're taking that time and that attention that could be directed to something beneficial, and we're squandering it. But if we can reclaim that agency, then technology, as you're saying, Z, can be a great thing. It's incredible what it can do, the way that it connects us, the way that we can talk to people across the world and see them in person. It's changed the relationship that my kids have with my parents. I mean, I never had that relationship with my grandparents. So it can be a wonderful tool, but we always need that sense of who we are. We always need to make sure that we're the ones who are in charge.
And we know that we are still stuck to a very primitive, ancient blueprint. We thrive when we're loved. We thrive with affection, with companionship. We thrive with the desire to improve ourselves, the quest for understanding. We thrive when we have that adventurous nature in our heart. We thrive when we overcome a challenge. We thrive. And when we don't do that, that's called failure to thrive. And when we give ourselves over to the box, like it was warned in the Vedas thousands of years ago, when a man's mind is in the box, we're in the worst place of the human story. We're in the worst part of that story, where our mind is in a box and we have no agency over the self. This was said in prophecy thousands of years ago. And we are now here where our mind is in a box. I talk to people so often that are just numb. I spoke to a young woman. She was divorced, and I was at one of the parents' parties, and her ex-husband and I met him, a nice guy, and she was saying, I just work. I'm a divorced mom. I have no companion. I have anything. My work is everything. If I didn't have work, there would be no reason for my heart to beat. I thought that was one of the saddest things I've ever heard. Beautiful young lady, whatever problems they had, ended in divorce. And she acknowledged that there was nothing in her life other than existing. And then a woman next to her say, yeah, I hear you. That's the way it is. Is it? And people have accepted that. We have not only gone from being so alone and lonely, but we don't even know what loneliness is because it's such a constant companion. So we have reached that tipping point, the zombie, the drone. But for those of us who can still smell and see and touch and feel breath in their body, we got to opt out of that. But it's an opportunity. I see more and more people moving out of the cities. We're all here. That's the talk over here in our place, in our community, is how can we get out? Everybody's got articles in real estate, and we're fantasizing about a small farm somewhere where we can hang out and grow things. And so at least we're thinking about living. Some people aren't even thinking about it anymore. Buying the next thing that might make you feel good, the next outrageously expensive product. We just talked about some cities are now becoming unlivable, not because of the homeless problem, but because it's unaffordable. No one, even wealthy people, can afford to be there for what you get in return. So there is a path away. Don't want this to sound bleak, but there's a path away. Let's find ourselves. Let's make friends and cultivate healthy relationships. If you don't do all that, at least with your immediate social circle, your partner, find all the adventure you need right there at home, right there in your heart. That's my thought.
Yeah, it's a good thought. Yeah, I've just got a couple of bars that I'll leave you with, Z, before we wrap this up. Let's be present. Let's thrive. Let's live before we die.
That's it. See you next time, baby boy.
All right. Peace.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on Podbean, iTunes, or your favorite podcasting app. Each 5-star review helps us bring you more unique and insightful content. Learn more at dharmamedia.com. Peace.